Welcome to the Chuck Whitlock Show, What's the Matter?, where we invite experts from every walk of life to discuss everyday issues affecting our community, your family, and you. Because if it matters to you, it matters to us. You may have seen him on The Oprah Winfrey Show, The View, Extra, or hundreds of other shows. Here's your host, Chuck Whitlock.
Hello, I'm Chuck Whitlock, and welcome to What's the Matter? What's the matter with the use of lead bullets, and does killing raptors affect the ecosystem? I'll tell you, bald eagles, our national symbol, are being poisoned by lead and are dying slow, painful deaths as a result. How can we stop this? What is the Cape Fear Raptor Center, and what exactly do they do? What does abatement mean? One of our guests, Chip Gentry, will talk about how raptors save lives every day. Eagles are part of a classification called raptors. Anyone who has seen the Jurassic Park movies knows what a raptor looks like. Raptors during the dinosaur age were fierce carnivores that hunted prey, often in packs. But did you know that descendants of raptors still live among us today? Modern-day raptors are beautiful, powerful creatures that many people are trying to protect from extinction. Raptors consist of eagles, falcons, hawks, owls, and vultures. Sadly, increasing numbers of raptors are dying every day due to toxic shock from lead. Where is the lead coming from? How many eagles and other raptors are afflicted? What is this doing to our environment? All of this when we come back. Now it's time to meet our guest panel. First, we have Dr. Joni Shemp, who founded the Cape Fear Raptor Center and is a licensed falconer and veterinary surgeon. Also with us is Scott Shemp, Director of Rehabilitation at Cape Fear Raptor Center. Lastly, we welcome Chip Gentry, an abatement expert who actually trains raptors to help him run his business. Welcome.
Thank you.
I want to start out with you, Dr. Shemp. When did this Raptor Center start, and why?
So I started the Raptor Center in 2012, and when I got my veterinary degree down here in North Carolina from North Carolina State, I moved to the Pender area and opened up a Raptor Center because of the need for rehabilitation and medical and surgical care for birds of prey that were injured.
Tell me about what the Raptor Center does.
Okay, so let me take you through just a sampling of a bird coming in. I receive a call from a concerned citizen saying, "We have this bird down, we don't know what to do." So at that point in time, we mobilize a transport team that will go out and rescue the bird from the field, bring it in, of which then we triage the bird into the hospital. So we've got a team of staff members. We'll bring the bird in, we'll draw blood, we'll look to check it against their baseline levels. We'll also run x-rays, and so then we'll work up the bird, and then we'll present that medical case to my wife, and she will come up with a medical plan, of which then myself and my team, we will implement that all the way through to completion of the bird.
When we think about release, the main focus that we have to have is, are these birds able to hunt effectively? Because if they're not able to hunt, they're not able to survive.
All raptors are hunters.
Correct, they are.
And in fact, I read that one raptor can kill thousands of mice in a month.
Right, so a bird like Karma here is a barn owl, and she eats 2,000 to 3,000 mice a year. So these birds are really super important to our environment. They're what we call biological indicators, so they're going to indicate in the ecosystem what else is going on. And so with barn owls, they're looking for eating rodents. And so if we don't have enough barn owls, we potentially have too many rodents. How does that affect us as human populations? It affects crop prices, because if the rodents are eating crops, the farmers have a harder time and need to raise crop prices. It affects disease and how disease is spread through mice. So each one of these birds of prey is super important in the environment for different reasons.
You're also an expert with eagles. Tell me about eagles.
Yeah, so
that's our nation's
So our eagles are
pride and
our
joy.
nation symbol. Last year we took in 22 eagles, and 75% of them had at least background levels of lead in them. And so we treat a lot of eagles for lead poisoning. They consume it through eating carcasses that have lead fragments in them, and it gives them a neurologic disease that literally is life-threatening. A lot of them die from it.
Do hunters shoot animals and then they're not able to catch them? How do animals get lead?
Okay, so really hunters are the biggest conservators of our environment. They're the ones who are the most invested into our natural resources. So it's not through an intentional propagating of the environment with this toxic element that lead is, so which is highly toxic to our raptors. We call this secondary poisoning. And I brought a prop that I'd like to show to you today. And it's basically just to say that I think a lot of this comes because of the lack of awareness. So I brought this to show you today. This is 2 rounds that were fired. I'm going to hold it down here so you can see it, and I'm going to shake it around a little bit so you can see that there's 2 rounds in there. There's a copper round that has held 98% of its mass after passing through ballistics. This second one that's all this dust in here is a lead round that's passed through the same thing, and you can see it's somewhere down in the neighborhood of it's shed about 30%, if not more, off into dust and fragments. And all it takes is one little tiny bit of that in a bit of carcass, and it looks like the main round is passed through, that the eagles ingest, or the vultures, or any of the other birds that scavenge, or any of the other wildlife that scavenge. We're not talking about just birds here, that they ingest, and then it is highly toxic to them.
What's the solution, Scott?
Make yourself the change. Our hunters are already our biggest conservators of the environment. So it's just a matter of making yourself aware of the fact that lead is toxic, and all it takes is one little bit, and then making the choice to choose a lead-free alternative. And it's not to say that it's only from lead ammunition. There are other sources, pollution and runoff and of other things. But this is one that we have good evidence for, and there is a viable solution out there.
Now we're going to show a video. It's just a minute video, maybe we've taken a minute and a half, of the ballistics involved in using a non-lead bullet compared to using a lead bullet. And it means some adjustments on the scopes and the rifles, but you can use non-lead bullets just like you use leaded bullets and get the exact same kind of ballistics if you just make a few adjustments. So I'm going to show that video. Let's watch this for just a moment.
So with our management of invasive pigs at our park, we knew we wanted to use ground hunting as a tool, but lead bullets will fragment when they hit flesh, and any animal that got into a carcass is potentially going to have lead poisoning. When we decided to use non-lead ammunition, we hadn't used it before, but we did know, that if you have 2 bullets, non-lead and lead, that are the same grain weight, the non-lead bullet is going to be longer than the lead bullet. That longer bullet is going to react differently to your barrel, it's going to react differently to your rifling, which means you're going to have different ballistics. Reducing the grain weight on a non-lead bullet got us similar ballistics to a higher grain weight lead bullet. You want to make sure you sight in your rifle with the non-lead ammunition. It is going to shoot slight. So we found that the tipped bullets in the non-lead, that tip really helps to drive the initial expansion.
So it really is important for us to reduce the use of lead bullets and for us to preserve and save the raptors,
right,
because they do keep the ecosystem in balance.
That's true.
Have I got it?
Yes, and I would like to clarify that's 80% of the scavenging raptor species.
Okay.
So think eagles, vultures, some small bits of red-tailed hawks and things of that nature. Very small number of them, but majority of them are eagles and vultures.
We'll be right back, folks. With us today is a gentleman who trains raptors for a number of reasons. Please join us in welcoming the founder of Hawk Manor, a abatement expert and master falconer, Chip Gentry. Chip, what is abatement?
Abatement is the process, or bird abatement rather, is the process of eliminating or at least reducing the numbers of nuisance birds that one may have around their manufacturing facility, their shopping center, the airport, whatever the case may be.
Give me a typical example of who would pay you to bring falcons to their location and provide this service.
So we did a project out in Oklahoma for a manufacturing facility out there that manufactures soy for a number of products, whether it's candy bars or sodas and things like that, and they had an issue with the number of pigeons around this big giant facility, and they were getting salmonella in their packing part of their plant. So they hired us to come out, and over a course of about 19 days, we were able to, with the birds and through live traps and things, we were able to remove about 266 pigeons in that little short amount of time. So that would be one example. Another example would be a large building in downtown Charlotte had hired us to come in because the roof of the place was glass. And it was a 5-star restaurant there. And the 300 pigeons that were hanging out on top of this roof every afternoon were blacking out the windows, and it was not very appetizing. And so we basically went in with live birds, and as we all know, fake owls don't work but for a short amount of time. So we put live birds on the roof ledge, tethered them to perches, and just let them hang out. So when the pigeons came to the building to just loaf around the rest of the day, and one of the birds kind of jumped, they realized real quick that that's not fake. And so they had to go do their loafing someplace else. And over the course of about 8 days, we did this project, and a year later they said they had seen one pigeon back on the building.
So they didn't hurt a single pigeon, but they scared them away.
That's correct. And so most of your birds are very habitual in the fact that they only do a few things a day, and they do those things at the same place every day. They're going to eat somewhere, they're going to roost somewhere, and they're going to loaf or hang out all day somewhere. And if you can interrupt one of those habits, then they're going to do that someplace else, and then it becomes a habit within just a short amount of time. And so you've eliminated that particular area for that to be part of their daily habitual routine.
How do you train these birds to do that?
It's pretty instinctive for the birds to want to chase things. I mean, this is what they do, and they're born with this in them. What we have to do is just kind of hone those instincts to where they will allow us to kind of be participants in what they're doing. Maintaining control over some of the birds by teaching them that a lure is food no matter when they come to it. So that if the bird's out flying and I need to call the bird back in, when the lure comes out, the bird's automatically going to come to that lure.
I see.
So we can maintain control of them. But the biggest thing is really just creating that relationship with that bird so that they understand we're there to work with them as a partner and not be a threat to them.
See, I understand, Chip, why the bird would instinctively chase prey.
Sure.
But I don't understand why he comes back to you, Mr. Falconer.
I describe it like this. All animals in nature, including ourselves, are all about conserving energy. When a lion eats a zebra, he sleeps for the next 23 hours. He doesn't. And people want to think that if they were birds, they would love to just fly around all day, which is not the case. We have legs, but we don't run around all day. And there's two ways for you to get food. You can go in your kitchen and spend energy and time to do that, or you can go to the restaurant and let somebody else do it for you. And so when you lock into that bird's brain and you understand that them hunting is work, that's their kitchen. But when I teach them that I own the restaurant and all you have to do is come to my restaurant, it plays on that energy conservation instinctual behavior that they have.
Thank you so much, Chip. Scott, I want to come back to you before we have to take a break. And I want you to explain to me what else the Raptor Center does.
Okay, so Cape Fear Raptor Center is threefold, and we've hit on two of them: rehabilitation, conservation. The third part is education. We have a whole list of birds that are part of our educational ambassador team, and these are special birds that are on a permit, that are able to sit on a glove like what you saw Karma earlier, and they're able to introduce people up close and personal to these amazing birds.
I want to volunteer at the Raptor Center. It sounds like what you guys do is just fantastic. So thank you all. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to you, Scott, about a whole different subject. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you. We'll be back. Now, we've all met Scott Chimp, the Cape Fear Raptor Center, but I want to introduce you to somebody else, Barb Rabb, who brought Snowy with her. Snowy's blind, and you got her when she was about 5 years old. Is that right?
Yes, from the shelter.
Now you formed a nonprofit. Give me a little bit of the background. Why?
Well, it all started with a dog named Monty. The organization is called Monty's Home. So Monty was my personal dog. He was a golden retriever. It kind of got my dog training career started. I started with puppy classes with him, then beginner classes, and then I went into competition obedience through AKC. And we just had a great partnership, and we went through, he was canine actor, and he was a registered therapy dog. And we just did a lot of work together. At 6 years old, he was diagnosed with a malignant heart tumor. So the vets told us he only had 3 months to live. And Monty lived 18 months. Once Monty passed, we kind of started our first program under Monty's home, and it's called the Rainbow Bridge Journey. And that is to help people who are either have lost their pets or had terminal illnesses. It's referrals. We have a counselor who helps get them through it, and we have online things that they can go and resources basically.
Yeah.
So that's where we started.
Now tell me about the prison program.
Well, we were just talking, a bunch of dog trainers. Again, I was full-time into dog training, and we were just chatting about the overpopulation problem, how many pets are being euthanized, and what can we do about it, get more dogs out of the shelter. So we just kind of went, well, if we could train them first, if we could take a shelter dog and train it, it would stay in the home longer, and people would want them more. But
Train it to be socialized.
yeah, and walk on a leash and not jump on people, just basic stuff. Because
Yeah.
coming from the shelter, that's why most of them end up there. I mean, the number one reason for euthanasia is behavioral issues. Dogs are brought to the shelter. So obviously we didn't have the time to go in the shelter and train all the dogs before they go out. So we were looking for places where people had more time, and kind of got to the prison.
And where does Scott Shim come into the picture?
Well, Scott was actually one of our trainers at Pender Correctional in our dog training program.
He was an inmate.
Yes.
And instead of making license plates, he was working with your dogs.
He was a dog trainer, absolutely, and a great one at that.
And now he's saving raptors.
Yes.
So Scott, tell me about this program. When did you first hear about it?
Okay, so I first heard about the program in December of 2009. So let me paint a picture for you. Your world is gray. You have a routine that you go through every day. I was in prison for drinking and driving, and I was serving out a long sentence. I was filling up my time with taking the college courses that they offered, and I transferred to this prison in Pender County, and I see a guy walking around with a dog on the yard. I said, where'd the dogs come from? I want a dog. I love animals. And so they said, well, that's part of the dog training program. I interviewed with them, and they selected me to participate in their program. 5 years later, I am at the end of my time. I'm coming up from minimum custody. I've transitioned from training the dogs at a medium custody facility down to a minimum custody facility. Along the way, I've earned a journeyman's in animal training through the U.S. Department of Labor and the North Carolina Department of Labor.
You did all this in prison?
All of this while I was in prison, and not just that, but I was able to train, and they successfully placed 15 dogs that I personally trained and over 75 that I had a hand in doing.
Now, are there other programs like this around the country?
Yes, yeah, they're all over the country. It started in the state of Washington. It was actually a nun who started it out there.
This is such a terrific idea, and Scott is the poster boy for rehabilitation.
Yes.
He's in prison, he learns how to work with dogs, he loves animals, he works outside the prison for a period of time at the Raptor Center, becomes the executive director, he gets paroled out of the prison system, and then he marries Dr. Shim.
I know, that's a...
This is a great story of rehabilitation.
It really is, and it's local that we can keep track. A lot of times the guys get out and they go back to their homes. I get a card once in a while, thank you so much. I got a job at a vet hospital. I got promoted because of how many skills I had, and I get calls, so-and-so needs a reference or applying for a job. So I know they're out there applying for jobs, but I kind of lose them after they get out.
Now, who trains the inmates to train the dogs?
It started with me and a couple other dog trainers 10 years ago. We'll be 10 years old in September. And we tweaked the system and all that, but once we got it rolling and got it going, the inmate who has been there the longest kind of teaches the one underneath them.
And
this
see.
is what Scott was so good at as well.
We're going to put your website, email address up for the viewers if they want to get a hold of you. It sounds like you can use volunteers and donors and,
Oh, absolutely.
and a host of things in order to
Absolutely.
keep this program going. And Scott, you're an inspiration, I have to tell you. You should be extremely proud of yourself, the work that you did and continue to do with this Raptor Center. I'm honored to have you both on the show.
Well,
Thank you so
I
much.
would just like to say that if it was not for people in the community like Barb Rabb taking initiative to get things like this done, this was not government funded what she does. They give their own time and their own money, and I would not have ever be in the position where I was if it was not for people like this, organizations like this. They're few and far between. They need support. Help them out. Let's do something to fix the problem.
Okay, thank you, both of you.
Thank you, Chuck.
We have to take a break. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, be right back. It's clear that lead has serious implications for our environment. Raptors are dying as a result, and they aren't the only species affected. These are intelligent creatures with a seemingly endless list of positive contributions to our ecosystem. Let's all do our best to protect our forest and wildlife. That's all for this episode of What's the Matter? I'm Chuck Whitlock. Remember, if it matters to you, it matters to us. See you next time.